Well, it's March the 28th, 2020, and today I wanted to have a conversation with my good friend, entrepreneur extraordinaire, lawyer, supermom, Lena Koke. Lena, you there?
I sure am. Morning, Chris.
Good morning. So how are things looking this morning after, what is it now, 3 weeks of isolation?
Wow, it's certainly unique. It takes a lot of a lot of adjusting and a lot of problem solving and a lot of empathy, I think, to everyone you're working with, because everyone's going through their own journey of whatever it might be, whether
Yeah,
fear or denial or just having a hard
all
time
those things.
understanding what's happening.
Yeah, I find I'm going through, very noticeably going through the various stages of denial through all of this. It's like
I've had a few
fear,
mornings where I've woken
acceptance.
up and thought, is this just a bad dream?
Yeah, 100%. Actually, my first thought in the morning is life is normal, and then I open my eyes and remember the time and place that we're in, and it's just
Mm,
extraordinary, hard to believe.
it
Um,
sure is.
So, Lena, before we get into some of the nitty gritty, talking about what you're doing at Axess Law, um, on the topic of COVID-19 and working from home and running a business from home, you're also a mother with a, well, no, how old is Robert now?
A little over 2 years.
2 years, so a 2-year-old running around, running an office, taking the dog for a walk. Do you have any COVID-19 survival tips that you want to share?
Oh, goodness. I think I more need to receive some. Potty training, terrible idea. Terrible idea to do it when you're all stuck in the house. It's not ideal, We
For the
thought
dog
it
or
was
for
so
Robert?
easy. Oh yeah, it's just really, it turns an interesting, unique situation into just, that much more interesting. So I would
Yeah.
like potty training off the list. No, to be honest, I would say, I think just trying to keep a mental focus on what needs to be done. And, in my case, I spend a lot of time just talking to our team, just making sure everybody's comfortable. As I said, everybody has their own personal challenges they're going through, and they're not going to be their best self if they're feeling more anxious than they need to be. So checking in, a lot of communication, just making sure they know we're here, we're a team, you have support. If something happens and, something blows up at home when you're trying to do your work, it's okay. We have, 4 different ways to communicate with our team. Somebody's there to catch you if you need that.
Yeah, yeah. I can imagine some serious challenges, and of course, the stakes are quite high. You're dealing with people's real estate, closing purchases, refinances. You're very much on the front line of well, keeping the wheels turning for real estate in the city of Toronto. And I think that's a good segue into who you are for anybody who might not know. Can you tell us a little bit, give us the elevator pitch, if you will, of who you are and who Axess Law is?
So I guess in brief, we're a law firm that started to help Canadians, and in our case, Ontarians, get their legal services done quickly, easily, affordably. So a big portion of our work, as you mentioned, is real estate. I'd say, a good half of it. We do a lot of real estate. We really focus on leveraging technology to allow people to do, especially these days, as much as they can virtually, as much as they can from home. We're only meeting with you face to face if we absolutely have to.
Mm-hmm.
Another big portion of our business is wills. We recognize the fact that, people in Canada, even though we're a developed country, we are not at the forefront of innovation by any stretch of the imagination in terms of where we should be. We still have the
Mm-hmm.
majority of Canadians don't have a valid will. They aren't able to have representation when they have a divorce. These are things that need to be changed and not just talked about. So what we do is we focus on really streamlining our processes, our technology, and allowing things to be done as virtually as possible. For example, if you were sitting up in Thunder Bay, you should be able to sit on your couch at 10 o'clock at night and meet with a lawyer who can consult you and draft your will. 60 minutes later, you have a will that's ready to be executed.
That's awesome. How cool. So is it fair to say then that the three branches of Axess Law's services are real estate, wills, and separation, uncontested separation, divorce?
Yeah, that's very fair.
Okay, very cool. So then in the context of COVID-19, the outbreak, the stay-at-home orders, we in real estate, the whole entire real estate world has been considered an essential service. And so how do you balance with stay-at-home orders, keeping the wheels turning at the office, meeting with clients to make sure that things can continue to close and purchases can happen, refinances can happen? I know there's a lot of anxiety about that. So I think your business is naturally set up already to cope with these changes, but talk to me about if I'm a client who needs to close a real estate transaction, what does that look like? What options do I have given the state of the world right now?
So for the most part, we try to do everything that we can virtually. So for example, if you were, refinancing your house, our whole team, our whole back office team that deals with real estate works from home now. All of the communications, all of the document preparation, everything is done virtually. The only time, even ID verification now can all be done virtually. The only time that we physically have to meet with clients, and this is not our preference, and we take we make a lot of efforts to ensure that we're as safe as possible when we do this, is either A, when a lender requires it. So there are still lenders who will require that physical documents are submitted. And we have a lot of creative processes in place where we really don't have to come closer than, to the client.
So you have
it's not ideal though.
The office?
Exactly. So this is not by any means ideal. This is last resort. We absolutely require physical documents, and they don't have a printer. They don't have a scanner. We have to meet in person. So we have processes in place where that can happen. And the other situation is just where the client, maybe they're uncomfortable with technology. We sometimes have, elderly clients who don't have a printer, who it's very anxiety inducing, and we find ways to do it physically while keeping as much of a distance and as many sort of protections in place as possible. But that's less than 2%.
Right. So let me get clarity on this. There are three ways, I guess, that you're doing business. There's completely virtual. There is in office, and then you also have in-home service. Is that correct, Lena?
That's correct. So these days our in-home service is less in-home than just physically we're showing up at your property, dropping the documents into your mailbox for you to sign and stay outside of the home. Sometimes we do it by phone. Sometimes we'll just do it from 8 feet away. This is when we have some of the clients who just really need to meet. But that's exactly right. So we have in office if the demand is there, and again, we try to discourage that as much as possible, and there are a lot of safeties in place. That's our last resort. In home, everything virtual. So we put about right now, I'd say the vast majority is done completely virtually, unless we can't find a way around it.
Okay, and so let me get clarity on one thing, because traditionally in real estate, it has been a requirement that documents are signed in ink. And I guess there are two aspects of this. One is the actual transferring of a title, right? The actual transaction, and the other is to have have mortgage documents signed. So can you put any clarity or shine any light on what the existing rules were, that all documents had to be signed in ink, digital signatures were not permitted? And so now in the context of COVID-19 and the outbreak, is the Law Society permitting digital signatures on these type of documents that will be enforceable by lenders and stakeholders?
So that's a huge question, but let me take a crack at answering it.
Okay, just Cole's notes on that one.
No, that's great. This is actually the question everyone's asking about, and this is something that we've been looking at for years. Just before I answer your question, I think what I'd like to say is that although this has been a really challenging situation for everyone, one of the, I guess, the highlights that has come out of it is the Law Society's moved quickly on it, and that's something I'm really happy to see. They've moved quickly and they've allowed us to be a little bit more creative in the way that we close transactions. It's unfortunate that it's taken a situation like that to have these movements occur, but progress takes time. So to answer your question, traditionally, it wasn't necessarily that all lenders required wet ink signatures to close a deal. The real obstacle that we had to being able to do everything virtually was that, first of all, documents needed to be commissioned, and the interpretation was by the Law Society, the recommendation was they needed to be commissioned in person. So all transactions require a commissioner of oath to sign off. A commissioner of oath, for those of you who don't know, is someone who essentially watches you swear an oath and signs their name saying, okay, Chris Mulder, do you swear that this statement is true? You would say, hopefully, yes, I do. Sign your name, and I would sign down below it as a witness, or in this case, as a commissioner of oath, and I would stamp the document. There have been various interpretations over the years of whether or not this needs to be done in person. The Law Society at a certain point said, listen, we're going to interpret it that this does need to be done in person. Saying that, the provincial government has taken great strides after a lot of conversations that we've been a part of this process over the last year or so. And they introduced a bill that will hopefully be passed at the end of this year, which will allow that to be done virtually. So the big issues we always had were, I have to commission a document in order to close a transaction, but I need to physically see this client sign a document. So that's a non-starter. The second was that ID needed to be verified in person as well. The Law Society, in the wake of the crisis that we're currently going through, has stepped forward and said, look, we're willing to interpret these clauses in the specific act that discusses this as being able to do it virtually. You, the lawyer, are still in charge of ensuring that you have all the safeguards in place, that it doesn't look like someone's under duress or doesn't have mental capacity, but we're willing to allow you to do these things virtually. So what that means is I can now, let's say, for example, we were closing a deal. We would have, as part of this screen, the document up. We'd be reviewing all the documents together. And then I would watch you sign the document. And after that, I would commission it. And whether that's done virtually through a type of software or whether it's done in person by you actually mailing it to me and signing it, only relies on whether or not the lender is going to require a wet ink signature. If not, there are a million softwares. We can sit here all day long and do it virtually. That's kind of a long answer, but it's a really big question that we could probably have a long talk about.
Well, I mean, it sounds like sometimes it takes destructive force to create new opportunities, new paradigms. I've spoken to some friends of mine who are doctors, and there's a huge shift away from in-person consultations as well. So I think it's interesting what'll happen after this is all done, how business will be done, what is acceptable. And it sounds like you're making some great inroads in the legal field to be able to do this, which is pretty powerful for your business.
Well, the hope is that not just us, but the whole industry comes out of this that much smarter, that much more efficient, that much more able to offer services to Canadians. I mean, we have a big chunk of Canadians who can't afford legal services or don't know where to access them. And we've got a big chunk of lawyers who are graduating from law school and can't find jobs. So the hope is that, during this time when we're actually forced to try to do things a little bit more efficiently, we can find ways to do it so that we can bridge that gap, find these lawyers jobs, get Canadians the access to law that they need. And it would be a wonderful thing if we could work together as an industry and make that happen.
Yeah. And I think Axess Law is well set up to do this. I mean, that was the premise upon which you founded the company.
That's right. That's right.
Good. Very good. So, Lena, then, if I'm kind of in summary, listening to you speak, it sounds like in many ways you are set up business as usual. Maybe signing happens through a slot in a door, which is a little bit unique, but you're open for business. Your staff is all working, you're working, and every day you're just trucking along to make sure that the wheels keep on turning.
Absolutely. We will not turn away one client during this time. And that's not to say that we don't respect the fact that social distancing needs to happen. It's happening. We have fully embraced it, but that doesn't mean that, the wheels have to stop turning. And that doesn't mean that people shouldn't be able to access what they need to. So our mandate is not one client gets turned away. We will find a way to make it happen. And we have.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a good segue. I wanted to ask you if there were any, over the last 3 weeks, let's call it, while our worlds have changed tremendously, any or feel good stories, of any specific clients that you can call that really needed the help. You guys were there for them.
Oh yeah, we've had quite a few actually. I would say there's one that happened last week that kind of struck a chord with me. I tend to be a little have a soft spot for older people. So particular case, we had a potential client who, I think situations like this make a lot of people sort of realize, or it drives home to people that they need to, have their wills done, have their power of attorneys taken care of, all of those messy things that we love to procrastinate. And I'm included in that 100%. So we had, a potential client call the office, and she was in tears. She said, I've been putting off having my will done for literally 35 years. My husband died young, and I've been alone, and I just haven't been able to get up the nerve to do it. And I'm scared, and I am scared I'm going to get, I'm going to get this COVID-19 thing. And I need to get my will done, but I'm scared to go out of the house. I don't know how to get it done. Can you help me? So of course, my first thought was, well, she's a 90-something-year-old woman. There's no way we're going to be able to do this virtually. How do we keep ourselves safe? But frankly, she was scared. She didn't want to come into one of our offices, and I didn't want her to come in. The last thing I want is taking a 95-year-old woman out of her house to her office. Absolutely not. I mean, if it's going to be dangerous, I don't even want one of our lawyers going to her house.
Yeah.
It was amazing. So this woman was quite amazing in her own right. She had email set up. That was about the extent of what she did on the internet. She would email her grandkids and, I guess, go to the CBC website or something.
Right.
He emailed her a link to our virtual will platform. And the nice thing is it doesn't require the download of any software. It's a click of the link. She got in there, met with us. We went through the whole will intake procedure, explained everything, gave her a full consultation, and her will was really easy, as you can imagine. But I mean, within 60 minutes, we had done everything. We had the will drafted, we had the will ready to go, and she could print it out at home. Now, of course, we had to figure out the execution of it, which we did. That's another story. But she was relieved. It was really emotional. It was.
Yeah. I can see how powerful that is, to be able to give somebody that kind of peace. And I know it's important for elderly people to leave things in order. It's I guess it's a stage in life, and that's a really nice story, Lena. I appreciate you sharing that. That's fantastic. And I think I've asked all the questions that I wanted to, and kind of got clarity, and I think we'll wrap up the conversation here. But I think it's really amazing what you have done with Axess Law, and you're set up you were very forward thinking. When did you found Axess Law?
About 7 years ago now.
7 years ago. So that was very forward thinking, and you are unique in this regard. I mean, compared to most real estate law firms, to have these capacities and these systems already in place.
Well, we try, right? Every day is a new problem to solve, and a new challenge, new adventure.
Yeah, very good. Well, Lena, very nice to speak with you this morning, and I hope the viewers get some value out of this. And what's the best way if anybody needs or wants to speak to Axess Law, to yourself, or to anybody on the team? How do we direct them?
Easiest way, if you use email, which I think, you know, most of the world does these days.
Lena, it's 2020.
I'm getting old, Chris. You can go to our website. There's a contact us form, which is the easiest way. If you can remember this, you can just email clientcare@axsslaw.com.
Beautiful.
Our website is easy. It's one click of a button. You can put your inquiry in. You can book an appointment straight from the site. The phone number's there. There's a chat option, so it gives you a number of avenues to reach us. So axsslaw.com, and Axess is AXESS.
Thank you. I'll make sure I include a graphic as well. So I guess on that note, we'll wrap up the call. Thanks very much, and please feel free to reach out to Lena for any legal related questions, anything mortgage related. I'm Chris Mulder from Tridac Mortgage. Have a wonderful weekend. Wash your hands, cough in your sleeve, and keep that 2-meter social distance. Bye for now.